Welcome to the start of a spoiler vlog for the first book in Malazan or Malazan, whatever it is, by Steven Erikson. I liked doing spoiler vlogs for Rhythm of War. I figured I'd do it here and see what happens. I think this is a book I need to talk out a lot, probably. We'll see. I just figured this could be fun for people who have read the books and wants to see someone go through their first time or whatever. And I like having these types of things for posterity for myself. So, what do I know so far? Not much. I've only read the prologue and part of chapter 1, but I'm excited because it reminds me a lot of the world building techniques used in Nine Fox Gambit, which both of them just have like throw you into its scenarios and crazy things are happening, and it's exciting crazy things. I'm also excited because this has a lot of magic. I think one of my biggest gripes with some of the bigger fantasy series is like, I want more magic. That's not every series, like obviously Wheel of Time and Witcher have plenty of magic, but I feel like for me, like A Song of Ice and Fire, it has magic technically. Same with the First Law trilogy. It's just like, but I want all the magic and like there's magic. So I just read, like I said, the prologue, and that seems to be like the whole change of power thing happening. And that seems to be all like, we went from this emperor to this empress, and the empress is mentioned on the back of the book. And it seems like we're expanding this empire, which is interesting because I just finished a memory called Empire. So I got empires on the brain. So this is kind of thematically the right time for me to dive into that. And I'm curious because in that prologue, we had bridge burners. And I guess I should also say just at the front, you can put spoilers for the first book. Obviously, don't put spoilers for any of the other ones in the comments. And obviously, like, I guess if by the end of the video I'm still confused, you can correct me without spoiling other books, but I'm just speculating most of this video. I expect to be wrong 80 to 100% of the time. But there are these bridge burners, and they were with the Emperor. We had him on the wall talking to this kid, who I guess now we met in chapter 1 is no longer a kid. And basically, in the back of the book, they says they're at this free city, so not controlled by the Empress. And I'm like, huh, did they switch sides? And I think that's probably part of what happened, because we're talking between the person who we met in the prologue and the adjunct for the Empress, and she's like, what, you made it through the purge. So I feel like the bridge burners are now on the other side. I'm not sure. When I was first reading the back of the book, I'm like, these bridge burners, huh, I'm like reading Lonesome Dove right now, and it's like kind of reminding me of the Rangers in that book, just like kind of sort of a part of the government, but not really, doing their own thing, kind of, I don't know. I'm just making things up to have fun, but I am very intrigued in this first chapter. Oh, that was cool. We have this, we don't get a lot of names so far of people, but we had this fisherman's daughter, and she meets up with Rira or something like that, and she suddenly does this weird prophecy thing, and it's obviously magic, and I think she's a part of this fisherman's girl, but then like these shadow people who are like, I think associated with this shadow god show up and like, oh, we need her, so who knows what's gonna happen there. And they just sent these like shadow hounds out to kill things, and right now that's where I'm at, where they're like, basically like, what happened to these people? And they're like, well, they got a bunch of teeth marks, but there are no tracks. And it's not like they're surprised, but I think they're like, oh, this is not what we wanted. So I really like this, like all these crazy things happening. I think so far I don't dislike how the political world building's being done. That's where I can be very hit or miss. I was very miss on that with Witcher up to this point. I'm on book 4 of The Witcher. And so here, I think this conversation between, is it Janao or something? What's his name? Ganoes. I don't know, Ganoe, between him and the adjunct has been pretty good in helping me figure out, okay, what's happened between the prologue and now, based off what little pieces I know. So I'm excited that so far the world building techniques are similar to Nine Fox Gambit, because as you all know, well, maybe you don't, I love the Machinery's Empire. This is not going to be a video about that, but the fact that they hold that similarity makes me giddy, makes me wonder what is my experience going to be, because I'll be real, I came into this with 0 expectations, and now I'm really excited. Time for a quick update. I just finished chapter 2, and what a chapter. Goodness, I normally don't like really long, meaty chapters. I think they're hard to focus on, and that was not an issue for this chapter, although I didn't read it all in one sitting. It's still kind of hard for me, but I was engaged the whole time. And I'm finally getting used to our cast of characters, which, like I said in a lot of TBRs, my enjoyment of this book is going to be based off how well the writing translates for me in terms of the descriptive sceneries of the battles, how it world builds the politics and world builds in general, and if I care about the characters. And so far, we're doing way better than expected on all fronts. I think when I last checked in, Perrin was just kind of talking to the adjunct, and I learned his name is Perrin, or like his family name, and so he's a noble gone to the military. He was in the prologue, and he's kind of been reassigned, and we got to go through the Warrens with him, which is kind of, I guess, how we can translocate quickly with the magic system here. That was really cool. That's when we got to meet a Claw, which is, I guess, I'm thinking of them as like Secret Service for the Empress with some magical skills. It's really cool. And I'll get into this in a bit because I have notes like I did for Rhythm of War. But like there's just a lot of diversity in the coolness and what magic can do. It's not like you just have wizards. At least that's my current interpretation. Maybe it's wrong. But I'm liking him. He's real sassy. He does not care if he makes the wrong people mad. He just like has these lines. I think I wrote one down. He was talking to Topper, who's the Claw, and Topper's like, oh, people are always so ignorant about the Warrens. And he's like, oh, are you mad at me now that, you know, I called you out? And he goes, it's a risk you'll have to live with. And I'm just like, you know, Perrin, you're great. And like he even like kind of was a little cozy with the Empress for a second. And he just got to his home at the end of chapter 1. So it'll be interesting to see the capital maybe for a bit. I'm hoping we do. That'd be really cool. One of my favorite things so far is just kind of seeing the world. Like I'm still trying to get my bearings on the actual potential plot of the story. Like I'm just meeting the people, meeting the world, kind of just enjoying that all-engrossing feeling of a new place. And I do think for my brain, the translation's working well. Like not that this is translated, but the whole like words to my brain stuff's going great. And we also met Tattersail. I really like her. She's I'm sorry if I'm going to be using the wrong word because we've been using wizard, mage, and sorceress, and I don't know if they're interchangeable yet. Because like I said, it feels like there's diverse magic, but I don't know which words mean what in this world building world. Maybe I'll find out by the end, maybe I won't. But Tattersail has magic, and it was kind of a confusing chapter, but like in a good way, because we start at present point and then we hit a flashback and then we come back, and I almost missed the flashback. Not that it was done wrong, I just almost missed that we went back in time. And so she works for, I mean, so far everyone we've met works for the Empire, which is interesting because typically, you know, that's not a traditional narrative structure because I feel like the Empire is just expanding for expansion's sake, and that's normally not a great motivator. Like, it doesn't make me root for them sort of thing, especially with what happened in Pale, but we'll get to that. But I really liked Tattersail and how I've got some additional, like, kind of intrigue, political world building from her perspective and learning about the siege from her perspective through different angles. I'm really excited to know more about her, especially with where we ended off with her having the marionette of one of her companions who passed away, and like I feel like she's playing around with which gods she's letting influence her, because this is very, like, for me, reminding me of the Iliad or and other Homer works where the gods are present, but they're not so much personified, like, directly. So she's got, like, I think the god of luck, and maybe, I don't remember what the other card she drew, but the last one she landed on was luck, which people would find very foolish, and she keeps hearing a coin in her head. I'm excited to get more of her, and I'm pretty sure I will, because her name's on the back of the book, so that's what we're going with. And Sari showed up again, so, well, I don't think I talked about this in the last clip. So the girl who I'm pretty sure is like part of that witchy crone person was taken in by the Shadow People, who I then think are using her to infiltrate the Malazan army. And so her name's Sari, and she's now with the Burn Bridgers. Is that their name? Bridge Burners. The reverse. The Bridge Burners, and I don't think they trust her. I mean, she's kind of like there, because everyone keeps talking about her like old eyes, and her name did come up again. So if I'm right that she was the girl who is Sari is there with the Bridge Burners. And like Tattersail and the Bridge Burners, I think both are under this impression that the Empress is trying to get rid of them. Even though there's already been this big purge of people from the previous Emperor 7 years ago, because there was like a coup around that. At least that's my current understanding of what's going on here. And so it makes me wonder, are my antagonistic forces in this book going to be the Empress and what's his name? Texgrin? He's a high mage. And because what happened at Pale was just so weird to me, especially when you look at the map of this region that the Empress is expanding into. Pale is a major city, but it's like kind of in the middle, and it's not like it's a port or anything. Like with Warrens, you could probably travel well, but I'm just wondering why this big push to go against what's called the moon spawn. And then also while you're doing that, why get rid of your firepower? Like why kill other mages and these bridge burners? Is it just because they were connected to the old regime? So I'm really unclear. I feel like so far, you know, Perrin is, you know, he wants to be higher up in the Empire, so I don't know what's going to happen with his character, but I feel like Tattersail might not be joining what might become the revolution or whatever, but I do think she's going to be on her own team. So I'm excited for that. Like I said, I'm still just enjoying getting to know stuff. We're only like, I don't know, 100 pages in, 80 pages in, an amount of pages in. And the cool magic. Let's talk about a bunch of cool magic so far. Gosh, this video clip's already so long, but there's so much. And so I already talked about the deck of dragons. That was cool with the whole god influence, and Hood is the god of death. That is something I've learned, because everyone just, every time we would go, oh my god, or we would invoke that, they say Hood. We got that soul shifting I talked about with her companion, where he's just like in the marionette. We've got that moon spawn in that battle. That was kind of cool. I was like kind of envisioning a little Death Star on the Earth and everything coming from it, and then it leaving to go away. I could have been envisioning that wrong, but I liked what I imagined. It was cool looking. And just the different species. I feel like so there's the Tiste, Andy, and the Moranth, and I'm pretty sure they're 2 different species of races on this planet. And oh, the fact that the Empress just lets the Moranth go into Pale and just plunder for an hour, like this happens a lot in older military books, particularly fantasy, but like, whew, it's like kick them while they're down. They just had all of this like mage battle happening, and that mage battle, like Tattersail losing her like lover that we just met, so it's not like that was emotionally weighing, but it was just like, especially like how that flashback was set up. It was like they were in bed together getting ready to go to meeting, and she's like, and this is, you know, before I see him die with the crows. I'm like, oh, that's not foreshadowing, that's just telling me. And so just learning about the magic so far, what little I know about this whole like elder magic and Warrens, I'm intrigued. Everything's really interesting. It's all still very confusing, and I'm sure I'm wrong on many points, but I'm having a great time. I have read 2 more chapters and finished book 1. Oh my. And things have happened, especially with poor Perrin. Like chapter 3, he basically has to go take this new job in the middle of nowhere, has to go on these flying beasts, and then Sorry just kind of kills him. Who Sorry, I guess, is, what's his face? Cotillion, who is, I guess, if not the shadow god, like the right-hand man of the shadow god, I think, who's apparently a god that hasn't been in play since the Empress took over. Like before that, they were like not really a Warren, which I guess sometimes Warrens are associated with specific gods, but maybe not always. I'm still keeping track of what certain Warrens do what. Like I know there's like a healing one that we saw in the section, and I really want to know the nature of the Warren that Tattersail has. But I'm on a tangent now, because Perrin gets stabbed twice, should die, and then the God of Luck, the twins, are like, but we kind of want to intercede, because we kind of just like, we don't like that all these gods are playing games and stacking sides, so we want some chance in there. So they like finagle things so Perrin doesn't die. And I really like the gods being in play, though. I don't think I've read something that uses gods in this way in a long time, when they are like more like, they have agendas, but they're more on the side. I do think some of the Inheritance trilogy for Jemison definitely has gods at play, but they're also sometimes more like main characters. So maybe these gods do become main characters. I have no clue, because like maybe Cotillion is a god, and so Sorry is just like a main character god thing. And it's crazy to me that they keep her around. Like, I guess they don't have a choice, but like, she's bad news all around. What else has happened? Oh, we just have all the prophecies. Tattersail has just been reading the cards, and they kind of make sense. And what's interesting is there's a fair bit of dramatic irony in the story. Like, we see scenes and know what happens, and the characters have to kind of figure it out. And one of the ways that Tattersail puts things together is with the prophecies. So part of the prophecy, she's connecting dots that we already know, like Perrin's the sword of the God of Luck. Like, we kind of saw that before she did, and she kind of, you know, prophesizes the whole stabbing of Perrin with Sorry, but we like kind of see that stuff happening. So I don't know what's in the prophecy for me to predict. I'm sure there's stuff, like, but I'll never finish this book if I keep going back and forth. But I'm really I like how the prophecies are kind of being used to explain how our characters are connecting their own dots. I want to know more about that wizard that is in the Bridge Burners. What's his name? I don't remember right now. But the fact that Tattersail doesn't know him is really interesting, since he is also a master of his warren, and that like shouldn't be a thing. I think his name's Quick Ben, now that I've talked about this long enough. Also, I really don't like the marionette wizard dude. He's just, I guess he controls like a chaos warren or something like that, and like he's just kind of ungrateful and kind of crazy. Like, you almost felt for the Hellhound at the end of this section, because he was trying to steal the Hound's soul, and then Perrin kind of does a mercy by maybe not killing it, but stabbing it, because it did escape. There's a lot. There's a lot going on. But this is the end of like the Pale section. And then we're going to go to that next free city. And I don't think I'm ever going to try to pronounce that name. It has some consonants next to each other, and I freak out sometimes when certain consonants are next to each other. Anything else happen? Oh, Tok the Younger. I want to keep my mind searching for that, because I think he's a claw, but he's also a claw that was like, so we've had these like beginning of chapters things, and most of the time they're poems or sometimes they're excerpts of history. And this was a poem, I think, about bridge burners, and at the bottom it had like a thing that said Tok of the Younger. And I know he's kind of like an incognito claw, so I just want to keep my eye out, since apparently he like seems to have things, and I liked his interaction with I think Perrin initially as well. And we haven't really talked about Whiskey Jack, but I do like Whiskey Jack. He's kind of your standard commander of this like troop, and like he's just trying to make it, and he's gone through so much, and like his entire company is down to like not 10 people, but basically 10 people. So whenever I get to have a moment with him so far, it's been really interesting. We just had one with him and the one-armed guy, and that was cool, because there's this whole idea that maybe the Empress is trying to get rid of them because they could make a coup and take over, but they aren't really planning to do that. So I do feel like there is more at foot, and I think some of it probably has to do with whatever the Empress did to turn this coup tied 7 years ago, upset this shadow god thing, and that's just been having this domino effect of repercussions to a degree, but I'm really not sure. I'm very intrigued by all of it. Oh, and then just like cool magic things that have happened, quarrels or whatever they are, these like flying insect things that the Moranth use, super cool. The Moranth themselves, I like that we've like casually learned that they have like a different coloring system. I want to know more about the Moranth. We haven't really gotten to talk to them, because I think they just have a very different speech style. Like, I don't know if their mouths can make the words of the humans, since they're a different race, because they seem to be talking in these clicks, but maybe they just choose to talk in clicks and could talk, and we just haven't met one of those yet. So that would be interesting, because I don't have a good sense of like their physiology so far. I just know they're a different species. And I think we've also met like a giant race, the Tholemen. I just know that Tattersail like saw a guy like grieving his wife who was like a giant, and that was, I think, the race associated with it. But everything's really cool, learning about all these warrens. I don't think, well, actually no, the end of this last chapter was pretty intriguing and action-packed, but chapter 2 I think is still like my favorite chapter so far. That was such a cool like narrative structure, but I'm excited to see what book 2 has in store. Alright, so I finished book 2, which is Darheaston, I think. Daruheaston, I don't know, there's a J and an H next to each other, which makes my brain implode. But this is the last free city, and I obviously, in the first book, we know that people are going to converge here for a battle, but in this one, we primarily have a different set of characters we're following, and I think we're just getting the political tension of the city. And there were some really, really cool moments for me, but most of it was political intrigue, which is kind of hit or miss for me. Most of the time I was into it, but sometimes it was hard for me to care, because that's just how I am with political intrigue. But we have a lot of interesting characters. I feel like this was a really good setup area, and I've got some really good buy-in, and I'm going to care about these people. Like, oh, and Open. Open is adding so much chance into the equation. Like, you can't really go a section without someone hearing the coin, and straight up the first scene we have a thief on the rooftops, which that was a really cool scene. Crocus was on the rooftops. I really liked how movement was done, and how he picks up a coin right when an arrow was going to kill him, because I guess there's potentially this assassin's war. I'm not really sure. It could be the claw being there. That's what people are hypothesizing, but Crocus was just doing his normal thieving thing, and he has this coin now, which at the end of book 2, the alchemist, I think his name is Baruch, is very much like, we need to save him, and we need to figure out if the lady or the lord is on his side, and if it's the lord, we're gonna need to have Rallick kill him, and Rallick's the assassin. And I'm wondering why that is, because at least the one time we've seen the twins, they kind of seem like they kind of work in concert, but I know they're chance. So I guess maybe the lady is more good luck and the Lord's more bad luck, potentially. And we meet Croup though. Croup is, or Croupe, I don't really know how to say his name. He talks in third person. He's a little weird. I can see why Alan from the Library of Alexandria does not love him. I think he's kind of fun though. I do think he livens up scenes for me so far, but I could just see that being overused as a device. For sure, if he was in my D&D campaign, he would be the character most difficult to work with, especially since it's pretty apparent, even Baruch sees it, that this man is much smarter and put together than he lets on, and he knows so much more than he says. He kind of pretends to be kind of oafish. And we actually get 2 really cool dream scenes with him. I like how this narrative's been using dreams, and you really don't know what's happening. In one of them, he met an elder god, and he was talking about child gods, so I guess there's different tiers of gods, which makes sense. So like my mythology loving brain is like, so we have like the Titans, and then we have the Olympians, so here we have the elder gods, and then we have the child gods, and it's very interesting. Also, sorry if you're like hearing things, people are making dinner. And so yeah, that happened, but then we met Onomander Rack or something. He's the Tisting Andy from the Moonspawn, which apparently has like a whole like country in it. That place sounds so cool. I hope we get to explore it at some point. And this dude is so cool. He's very tall. He has this really scary sword, and he's very powerful. That whole scene with Baruch and him was super interesting. Could not put it down. It was so cool. I am interested to know what Relax's plan is with Murillo and this party. It was really interesting. It's like, so we have to break into this party and you have to seduce this woman. And this is all because of Open got in Rallick's head during an assassination attempt, which I think has to do with the fact that his friend used to love this person who's kind of like sleeps around, and he was at the card table like with his head on the table and like destitute. This is a hypothesis because they didn't really talk about it. So like that political intrigue, I'm like wondering, okay, what do the gods want from this interaction? Because there might be like civil war within the city before there's even this siege, potentially, which is not good for the average common man of this area. Oh, there was also a crow that talked. That was cool. I think I didn't even mention earlier, there was a hound that like we got his perspective. I'm really big into these magical creatures, and getting their perspectives is really cool. So like I said, there were a lot of really cool things in this section, and I do feel like we were very calm before the storm, get our bearings and everything. I just know that this was a much harder, slower paced, denser section than book 1 was for me, because I feel like book 1 just had so many epic flashbacks and magic scenes and magical intrigue, which I like that more than just kind of pure political intrigue. But the way that this city is described, I feel like I really understood like the tiering system and the rooftops. Like the description of the city made it a very vibrant place for me. Like I love that the lamps are like this green blue. That's such like an interesting note. So I'm having a really good time. I don't know what part 3 is called. Book 3 is called The Mission. Oh, that sounds fun. So we'll see what happens. I've now tabbed up the book to be for each book. So this is how many I have left, and I'm really excited. All right, so I just finished book 3, and I feel like the end of each book is just crazier than the next one. Like, what happened to Tattersail? Like, that's my biggest question going forward, is what happened when Tattersail and the fire hug with the giant mage thing happened? Like, obviously her soul is not in her body anymore. Is she in the body of the dead person that the giant was carrying around, that other mage who had passed away? I don't know. Is Hairlock with her? Like, we had the crows like kind of looking at, or are they ravens? I don't know. But we definitely had Crone being told by other creatures of their kind about this little like puppet thing that kept bringing in fire, and how their warren was chaos, and that's apparently an elder warren. So cool. So I don't know, because I also like at first I was like, oh, did like Tattersail become another like creature of chaos, kind of like Hairlock? But then it was mentioned that Crone didn't notice this woman who just didn't have magic existing or something. I don't know. I think whatever did happen was bad, and I have bad feelings that she's in like a kind of dead body right now, because soul shifting definitely happened. I also low-key want to know how Tak the Younger lost his eye. I don't think he was in book 2, because at first I was like, well, was he and Dara Houston on the rooftops in that first chapter of book 2, and like he had that fight with the cat? Because one of those people had a fight with a cat and got hurt. But it seems like fire was more the cause and less a cat, but I want to know. And I really like Tak the Younger. I really like a lot of the characters. I did also really like Perrin and Tattersail kind of flirting and getting together. I did not expect it, but I did not hate it. And I've been really enjoying all of the tension in each of our little like nucleus of people. So like from the Malazan Empire, you know, we have, what's his name? Dujek, Lorne, Tattersail, and that high mage dude that I can never remember his name. And they're all working for the Empress, but they kind of all have their own thing going on, especially like Tak the Younger. Like, who knows what side he's on? Like, he's a claw, but he doesn't seem to be a claw based off what I think a claw is. No clue. And obviously Whiskey Jack's group, we got the whole sorry problem. And then we finally met, what's his name? Brood, who's like this half-human warrior that we've kind of been hearing about in book 1, I think, first. And he's having Crone spy on Rake, that like really powerful guy we met in book 2. So like even there's like this tension. And we finally in book 3 found out kind of maybe why the Empress is so set on getting this free city, this last one, and potentially near it there's this thing that they might try to awaken, which I don't think is a good idea. And obviously Tool, this new race creature thing we've now stumbled upon, who's traveling with Lorne, seems to agree. You learn a lot of cool stuff from Tool, but it's also low-key my least favorite part of book 3, which makes me feel bad because I feel like there's so much cool information there. But those were the times I found myself like getting distracted or dazing off, was when Tool was talking. So a little bit of a bummer, but a lot of interesting things happen. What's book 4 called? I haven't even looked. It is called Assassins. So we'll see where on this map we're going to be. And that's another thing. There's apparently tension in the 7 cities, and I kind of wish my version, it's this paperback, only has 2 maps. One for Dara Houston and one for the island area, peninsula of the campaign we're on, the Genebacus or something. And I don't have like a map of like anything else. And I have been not Googling anything because I am trying to stay far away from any spoilers of any sorts. But I kind of wish I had one to like know where the 7 cities was. And like, I want to know what happened there because Whiskey Jack was involved, Dujek, and I don't know if that had to do with the whole like 7-9 years ago, the Emperor falling thing. And it's just like unrest associated with that or what. Like, I still don't have quite a good enough grasp of these 250 pages to really know, but I do like that this work is getting me like thinking, and that's been really fun. All right, I finished book 4. This had some of the pacing I liked from book 1. The way this one ends, oh, with mage assassin fights with the something Andy, Tisty Andy, and the one like former claw assassin from Whiskey Jack, and just our other assassin from Dara Houston. That was really cool. I don't know, I just, whenever things are described that are magical, it's just really awesome. And then like Rack showed up and like his sword is still like so terrifying and things like that. So that was really cool. I really liked that we like upped the pacing, and I hope that we keep gradually upping the pacing for the rest of the book. Like, I don't mind that it's been very slow and dense, but as I say with like a lot of books I read, if you're going to be that slow and dense, I need a certain level of payoff. I can't really ever pinpoint what that means for me, but I do think things will wrap up. I also have other thoughts. I've been buddy reading this with Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative, and she was reading it, and she's way better at picking up descriptive words than I am because I don't visually see a lot of things. So like if an author tells me a hair color, it doesn't really bother me. I don't think about it. But she noticed that Crocus had black hair when we first met him, then brown hair in the bar, and then he has black hair again. And like, it could just be a typo or a mistake, but this book's been out since '99, and this is a pretty recent copy. And also he has that coin, and so he's Open's coin bearer, and Open has 2 faces, so I'm wondering if that's kind of some of the bleed through from that influence. I don't know. It could just be a typo, but it's interesting, and everyone's always like, he's so intentional with his words, so, you know, that's just like a thing. What else do we got? We've gotten a lot of cool history, because Krupp was reading a history textbook and being really bored with it, but also just like through just different conversations that we've had, we've really learned about like the 3 original humanoid, I'll just call it humanoid, they're not humans, but like what we would consider conscious beings of power, and how there's this burrow that has the Jag Huts like magic and elder magic associated with it. And we have this Talon like tools already around. And we actually, oh, there's this really cool scene where Croup is like, apparently they called him a vessel of change. And that's when Tattersail is like reborn in a Riki like person's womb, even though there was no baby there, and like weird magic, because she did end up in that like undead, like that dead person's body. So yeah, that was not great. So like we had that whole dream scene, which is also a point we learned about the history, because we had a Talon that wasn't quite like what Tool was, like it didn't go through that like transition. I really enjoyed that being how I learned about the history versus when Tool was just talking about it. I don't know, I just thought that was kind of a dry form of doing it. But I do like that we've had this kind of repetitive introduction of it, because it's definitely not stuff that I take in all at once. It's very confusing. And also it feels like people in this time don't have a very strong connection to their ancestral ancient roots as well. So this all makes sense. So that's been cool. Oh, we learned more about Quickben, who apparently used to work for the Shadow. That's cool. That's cool. I want to know so much more about him. And he also is like so powerful. And apparently the alchemist Baruch is also really powerful. We're just summoning demons everywhere. So that's really cool. It's interesting getting Sari perspectives, because Sari is like a vessel for this like assassin god person, but seems to still have a personality that I wouldn't quite associate with that like grand persona. And the seer is trying to break through, I think. So that's really cool. So yeah, like there's just a lot going on. Crocus is just lovesick and has a coin. I don't really understand much about what's happening with him. And I have another theory that Croup is maybe the eel. There's been this person in Darahiston, the eel, who's like, I guess kind of has his own spy network that Baruch doesn't know about. And Croup was telling him that what he's looking for is right in front of him. And Croup did know that like people were doing construction work. So like, you know, maybe that's a thing. I don't actually know if I mentioned that in a previous clip, because I don't know if that was in book 3. I wrote it down for notes here, so if I'm repetitive, I'm very sorry. But yeah, things are picking up. Oh, and the next section's called the Godrobi Hills, which is, I know, where this whole like big powerful thing that like everyone's converging on is happening. So like, let's see what happens. All right, finished book 5, which is way more action-packed. Lots of our threads are coming together, so I'm really excited. Might try and binge this out, because up to this point, not super bingeable, not that that's been a negative, but it's for sure something I've noticed as I take it like a chapter at a time. But Lorne and Tool have had some really interesting conversations that have led to Lorne being very introspective about should we be doing what we're doing, which the answer is no. I mean, that's my answer. But, you know, the futility of empire, how this is this repetitive cycle for different species, not even just the human race. And so that was like an interesting thing. And that's also like connected to where Perrin is, as he's now officially decided, I've defected. I am not part of the Malazan Empire anymore. So that was pretty interesting, and you know, we get more backstory from Tool per usual, especially about the why he can find the burrow and how it's connected to this older form of magic. And Perrin, who definitely seems to be the focal point of this book. Like, they keep saying power converges on power, and I don't think he is innately powerful based off all of our players, like Rake and everything. But his sword is touched by luck, God, open twins. So maybe that has to do with it, but like he met with everyone. He met with Rake, which like lots of stuff happened there. It seemed to be implied that Open's direct hold on Perrin was broken in that encounter, probably because his sword is, to me, very similar to the Sword of Lorne, where it like does stuff to magic, although there's like a whole prison in the sword that Perrin went to kind of help the hounds. That was all very interesting. He like actually brought down a god. Perrin gets to do the coolest things. He also at the end meets up with Cole, who we finally get to hear a bit about, and I was right, Cole was the person that Rallick is trying to help, although like it seems like Cole is just kind of dumb and kind of love-struck. But yeah, and also where's Talk the Younger? Like we saw him get taken into a warren, so I'm sure he's still fine. Well, fine. Is anyone fine in this book? But I don't know where he is. And also, I think we just saw Tattersail as like the 5-year-old. And I was wondering, there at the beginning of this book, there was a poem, something called Silver Fox. And I was like, is that Tattersail? Like, it's hard to tell which of these things are based in the time period we're in and which of these things are older works that are related to chapters. Because like, I know so little about this world, but just that emotional thing that it did to Perrin was really cool for me, because I feel like sometimes what I've noticed in myself as a reader lately is if it's slower paced, that's fine, but I'd like it to be spent on character interactions and character relationship developments. And I have felt that although this isn't the worst at that, some of it's really left off the page. So getting to see some of these key moments that would trigger development in a relationship between characters it's been my thing. It's been wonderful. And let's see, oh, Sorry is no longer Sorry. Well, still knows that name, but it seems like that God persona, the rope, has left because Rake was like, get this out. Rake is so powerful. Like, Rake is so cool. And I like how awkward Crocus is with Sorry and everything. Crocus is just such an awkward boy. Like, I don't really have strong opinions, but I don't mind him. And yeah, those are my quick thoughts. I think I'm in the end game. I'm a little curious because like some of the discords I'm in, people are like, what just happened? But I also haven't been like, I feel like as confused as many people. Like, I mean, I'm confused, but I feel comfortable enough in my confusion. So I'm wondering, am I going to be like thrown from that? We will see. All right, I thought I'd give you guys good lighting for the ending clip because I have finished Gardens of the Moon, and it's gonna reflect because I put on my ring light. Guys, no one told me this was gonna be a complete thought. I'm so happy. Like, this took me 20 days to read. I haven't like put timestamps throughout this whole thing, but this is the longest it's taken me to read a book since I've been keeping track of how long it takes me to read books. Like, I'm not regretting that because I think that's what I had to do to make sure I enjoyed my time. I think if I forced myself to push through the slower moments, I wouldn't have liked it. But man, do things happen in this last part. I don't think I've talked to you guys since book 5, so book 6 and 7, things happen. I was right, the Croup was the eel though. I'm really happy with that. And then when the dragons showed up, I was like, you know, I don't really know where these dragons come from. And then I thought about it overnight because I, you know, took a break. I was thinking about it, you know, the Tisty Andy, I don't know a lot about them. They could become dragons, and then Rake becomes a dragon. There's so many things that would be so cinematic in this story, and I loved how all the threads came together at the end. I love a good masquerade. That was nice. And then Rallick and the fact that he like is kind of changed. We're not sure permanently or not by this whole like dust stuff that he put on him. That was really cool. Crocus, of course, like his one contribution to this story was throwing some bricks. But I do like how it ended, how everything kind of tied up. I don't know. I could see maybe some people not liking some of the quick endings to certain things, like the Tyrant, the Jag Hut, you know, because that a little fast and a little convenient. I don't know. I don't understand this magic system enough to understand if that was convenient or not, but I kind of liked it because you still got huge fight scenes. Also, I do know now that I've been saying this name of this city very wrong. I think I've been saying Dara Houston, but it's Darujistan. I only know that because Stephanie's been buddy reading it and she picked up the audiobook for a second. In my defense, it's a made-up word, but what other thoughts do I have? I'm excited to see more about like, which characters do I care most about in future books? Quickpen, for sure, Quickpen. That would be really cool to explore. Croup, of course. I don't know if it's Croupe or Croup. I don't know. I loved every moment of his character. I know Alan from Library at Alexandria does not like his character. And I could see his character being pushed to the, like, extremes and being annoying. But I don't have to deal with him. I just get to watch him, and he's really put together and smart and knows what all the threads are doing. And I kind of love that character in my stories, so that was really cool. Man, so many things. And I loved the double cross that was happening with Whiskey Jack and whatever the one-armed soldier dude back in Pale. And the unknown about what's going to happen there, that the Moranth are still on their side, but you have to deal with something brewed. It's for the Crimson Guard, I think. But there's all of that stuff. So many potential things to explore in future books, but at the same time, I felt very satisfied with how this ended. Like, I put in all of this work and I was really nervous that it was going to be this really weird, ambiguous ending, and no, it's a very clear, wrapped up ending. And I know Andy's warned me that not all of the stories in the Book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen are like that. But I am really happy that I put in all of this work to think about this, and it's cool. Oh, and there's cool stuff with the gods, how the gods are actually now the servants of man, which is a theme in a lot of fantasy. Particularly Robert Jackson Bennett's first series, the Divine Cities trilogy, I think is what it's called, was very much about that theme. I think that's a huge theme in the Inheritance trilogy by Jemison, so I love the idea of powerful beings not being as powerful as we think, and the whole Perrin with everyone. Perrin getting to deal with all the, I think they're called ascendants. I finally have an official word that was put in the text. Like, when he gave Cotillion the sword of chance, and he's like, ha, sucks to be you twins, and the twins get all nervous. So many things, and yeah, I'm really interested. I think Perrin's another one. The one thing I don't have complete buy-in to is the Perrin Tattersale love story. Like, I totally bought into the one night stand. That makes sense. But I didn't think they had actually spent enough time together consciously. Like, obviously they did spend a few weeks to a month together, but usually one or the other was like very ill. So I didn't think they got in like more than a few days, like actually like two functional human beings with each other before, like, apparently Perrin is very in love with Tattersale. But like, I also am a sucker for what happened in the epilogue when Tattersale's like, I'll wait for a soldier, and I'm like, ah. So I'm like confused, because one could argue insta-love, but there have been like a few character development things you don't quite get to see on page as much, which is one of my little complaints. But it's honestly not done that badly, especially with how many characters there are. And like, sometimes I would get the Whiskey Jack crew and the Croup crew kind of confused and conflated, but like not too bad. I was kind of able to keep it all straight. This was really fun. I have no idea what I'm gonna rate it. I'm talking to you guys fresh, like right after I finished it. Like, this is like 30 minutes after I finished it. I like sat down, boxered some friends, ate some food, and now I'm here just being like, huh, I did it, guys. It was worth it, I think, is really what I'm happy about. I was really nervous about putting in all of that mental energy and like it not being worth it. But like, I'd reread this story. Like, if you told me this was the only book in this world, I'd be content and I'd reread it and parse it out. Like, yeah, the fact that there are more books in this world is pretty exciting to me. Now, I don't think it's an all-time favorite, just because, like, I think you can notice, maybe you can't, maybe I'm too good at pointing out the things I like, but it was kind of slow-paced in the middle. Like, when we're setting everything up, but I think you need the setup for the payoff, so it's like that, it's a good slow burn. Like, what stops it from being just slow-paced and boring is how it wrapped it all up. It was really good. And I do like that Crocus did not get the girl he wanted and ends up with, her name's not Sorry anymore, it's like Esparel, I don't know, it's some other goddess of the thieves. I'm so interested in all of the things, because it's been implied that the big bad is something else, but it's only ever mentioned. It's not like on the page, which is why, you know, it implies you could see it in the next season of blah blah blah. So yeah, I think I've rambled for long enough. This vlog is definitely long enough, and who knows what I'll say in my actual spoiler-free review. I'll think of some words. I haven't decided if this is being posted same day, before, or after, but we'll see what happens. And if you made it this far, thanks. Put a moon, I guess. I don't understand what this title means. Lots of stuff does happen in gardens. Obviously, we have the moon spawn. I do not know what this tower is. Is this supposed to be that tower that everyone's always in, the Belfry Tower? But I thought it was described as like a rectangle, but I'm not very visual, so I'm bad at things. Also, there's some good art out there. This is one of the most visual series ever. I could talk about this for a very long time, so I'm gonna go. But thanks for watching. Like I said, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.